Oh, I was on mute. Can you hear me?
Okay. Yes.
Okay. Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining the February 2017 edition of the Sustainable Materials Management Web Academy. We're happy to have you participating. This 90-minute webinar is hosted by the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency to provide a training and networking opportunity to our participants. Today's webinar is called Taking on Takeout Waste, New Approaches in New York City. There's more happening in New York City than what we can cover today, but we hope to give an overview of some of the attention being paid to the problem of takeout waste. And we'll also showcase two specific examples of restaurants who have developed creative solutions to try to reduce takeout waste. Our speakers, first is me, Rachel Chaput. I'm from the Sustainable Materials Management section at EPA Region 2 based in New York City. I'm going to give a little bit of background environmental context for the webinar and mention one of EPA's partnership programs called WasteWise. Next, we have Sarah Currie-Halpern. She's representing both her consulting firm, Think Zero, and the Manhattan Solid Waste Advisory Board. Third, we have Nick Kenner, CEO and co-founder of the restaurant Just Salad. And finally, Chloe Vichot, founder of the restaurant Ancolie in Greenwich Village. And before we get started, I need to show this disclaimer, which we do as part of all of our webinars. I'll give you a minute to read it. And I've already mentioned materials management a few times. It's the name of my section at EPA and is also of the webinar series. And I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page with what that actually means. So I extracted EPA's definition. This is from a 2009 EPA report called Opportunities to Reduce Greenhouse Gas Emissions Through Materials and Land Management. And forgive me, but I'm going to read this long thing. Materials management refers to how we manage material resources as they flow through the economy, from extraction or harvest of materials and food, for example, mining, forestry, and agriculture, production and transport of goods, provision of services, reuse of materials, and if necessary, disposal. EPA promotes materials management approaches that serve human needs by using and reusing resources productively and sustainably throughout their life cycles, minimizing both the amount of materials involved and the associated environmental impacts. And then you can see here, according to the very same report that I just cited, if you account for all management of materials in the U.S., we're actually talking about 42% of the total greenhouse gases generated by this country. So it's an enormous amount and therefore represents an enormous potential for improvement. And takeout packaging waste is a very big problem. I don't think it's fully quantified, but our next speaker is going to be able to quantify that for you a little bit. So I wanted to briefly cover some of the motivations for reducing takeout waste. One of the big motivations, of course, is it's costing New York City a fortune to dispose of all their waste. They landfill some and they incinerate some, and it costs a whole lot of money, although I don't have that dollar amount. Another incentive is pictured here. EPA has an initiative called Trash-Free Waters, and it takes as its focus the problem of trash, primarily plastics, in the marine environment. And I got this slide from a Trash-Free Waters presentation, and this is plastic found in the belly of a fish, obviously. And this is more bits and pieces of plastics found suspended in water. I believe this slide was from a study done in the Great Lakes, but really you can find waters around the globe that look just like this and even worse. And this particular motivation for reducing takeout packaging, this is a bit more of a health concern than strictly environmental, but I do think it's a real incentive for moving our society back away from the disposable food packaging as much as we can. According to a report published just a few weeks ago, about a third of fast food packaging is contaminated with fluorinated compounds, which can also migrate into the food that you eat. So you can easily Google this report for more details. And the problems that the environment and even our food supply face from the accumulation of plastic in our world, these are huge problems and growing rapidly, and it's vitally important that we tackle these problems in as many different ways as we can. So this webinar is intended to encourage businesses, municipalities, really anybody who is willing to squarely look at this problem and try to think of creative ways to help. And there are definitely things that can be done. Two of our speakers are from restaurants who have waste reduction as part of their mission statements. They're living proof that waste problems can be solved with effort and ingenuity. However, most businesses are still not yet focused on these issues, and so we need to encourage them. EPA has a supportive role. We're hosting this webinar, for example. We also plan to host a meeting, hopefully this spring, with the relevant New York City agencies and other important stakeholders to try to move this issue forward in New York City. And I'm also going to describe a partnership program that we run that aims to reduce all types of municipal solid waste going into the landfill. So WasteWise is a partnership program that we have run since 1994. And like all of EPA's partnership programs, WasteWise is free and voluntary. It's open to any organization that wants to reduce its environmental footprint through reducing waste disposal. You can participate in WasteWise in either of two ways, and both are valuable to us. Participants reduce their waste, incrementally improving their performance over the years, and they report their waste data to us once per year. And endorsers basically tell other organizations about the value of the WasteWise program. And there are many organizations attending this webinar today who could probably be very valuable contributors to the program in one or both of these capacities. So I urge you to consider participating. And both of our restaurant speakers today are WasteWise participants. Benefits to WasteWise participants as listed here. There's free technical assistance. The cost savings is obvious because it's implicit in reducing waste, generally speaking. Reduced purchasing oftentimes, and also reduced tipping fees as well. You get free access to our waste tracking software, which can be used to store data and also run nice reports. There are definitely recognition opportunities such as this webinar, social media. We have an annual awards process, and we also list all participants and endorsers on the website. You can use the WasteWise logo and your own company materials, and also, obviously, you help the environment. So if you're interested in WasteWise, you can check it out at this link, or you can just Google it. You can also contact me about WasteWise or about anything else, and my contact info is listed up on the screen. And one last item, I want to point out the toolkit. I'm not sure if it's in your handouts box yet, but it will be before the end of the webinar. It's called the Toolkit for Reducing Wasted Food and Packaging, and the link that's listed will take you to an online guide and also an Excel spreadsheet, which is part of the toolkit. And it's meant to help food service establishments reduce wasted food and packaging. We don't have time to take questions about it today, but I thought it's quite a relevant resource, so you might want to check it out on your own time. So now we're ready for the rest of our presenters, and I'd like to introduce the first panelist. Her name is Sarah Currie-Halpern. In 2016, Sarah founded the waste reduction and diversion consulting firm called Think Zero. It helps corporations, building owners, and small businesses with waste reduction and diversion planning and implementation. Before founding Think Zero, Sarah ran solid waste and zero waste programs for the Mayor's Office of New York City, where she helped develop the zero waste section of the One NYC Sustainability Plan and the waste section of the recent NYC roadmap to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by at least 80% by the year 2050. She's chair of the Manhattan Solid Waste Advisory Board and a board member of Earth Day New York and the Our Baby Foundation. Sarah is deeply committed to environmental and social advocacy. Welcome, Sarah. And George, can you pass the controls over to Sarah, please?
Great. Hi there. Can you hear me okay?
Yes,
Yep.
you can.
Great. Thank you, Rachel, for having me today on this webinar about reducing takeout packaging waste in New York City. My apologies for, I have a little bit of a cold. Uh-oh, what's going on with my screen here? Sorry, bear with me 1 second. I'm just having a little technical issue getting my screen to move on. I think it's because of that. Now it should move. Yeah, there we go. Okay, thank you. So I think you already gave some background on me, Rachel, so I won't go into too much detail. You mentioned Think Zero, which is we are a waste diversion and reduction consultancy in New York City, working with large building owners and corporate tenants. And you mentioned some of my other background, which I won't go into, but I do want to mention that I'm certified as a Zero Waste Business Associate by the U.S. Zero Waste Business Council, part of GBCI. Now, a little bit about the Manhattan Swab. We are an advisory board that was established in 1989 by New York City's Local Law 19. We're a nonprofit, non-governmental organization dedicated to increasing recycling, reducing solid waste, and advancing solid waste policy in New York City. And the board is comprised of waste and recycling industry experts and concerned citizens. Now, the MSWAB Policies and Programs Committee is currently working on an initiative to help reduce takeout container waste in New York City, amongst many other initiatives. There are already efforts in New York City to help reduce waste, including takeout waste. I'm sure many of you are familiar with the One New York plan, which came out in 2014. Mayor de Blasio made an aggressive commitment to reach zero waste to landfill by 2030. And these initiatives listed here are sort of an outline for how the city plans to reach its zero waste goals, including expanding the curbside organics program, reducing plastic bags and all other non-compostable recyclables. Obviously, we're going to need a little more work on plastic bags, given that our law just went away today, but we're looking forward to working with the state on that. And then, other things like increasing reuse and recycling of electronics and textiles and reducing commercial waste disposal by 90% by 2030. So I want to mention also the Green NYC BYO Bring Your Own program. I'm sure many of you are familiar with Birdie. We love Birdie. This program encourages New Yorkers to bring their own mug, bottle, and/or shopping bag. You can join the many New Yorkers already saving money and helping get New York City to zero waste. Pledge today to bring your own mug, water bottle, and shopping bags to work, to school, or wherever you go. The great thing is once you take the pledge, Green NYC will send you a free mug, bottle, or bag. So this is certainly contributing to reducing takeout waste. Oops, I'm sorry. Just having some issues with my slides here, bear with me. Okay, so two major New York City waste policies impacting businesses today that I want to mention is the new commercial organics law, enforcement of which started in January 19, 2017. I won't get into that one in too much detail because it doesn't really apply to today's conversation, but I will get into the new commercial recycling rules, which will be enforced starting August 1st, 2017. Those came into effect in August 2016, so we are currently in a warning period. And the commercial recycling rules should help divert takeout container waste from landfill incineration. So with these new rules, all businesses must recycle metal, mixed metals, glass, hard plastic, paper, cardboard, and beverage cartons. This is a big improvement upon the former commercial recycling rules, which essentially said that different types of businesses had to recycle different types of materials, and that was very confusing for businesses. So this should definitely help. I think this is important. New York City Business Waste Facts are important because most takeout container waste occurs during the day, particularly around lunchtime, and therefore is accounted for in New York City's commercial waste stream in large part. So New York City businesses generate 3 million tons of waste per year. About 37% of it is paper waste, 35% is food waste, and 17% is metal, glass, and plastic, according to the latest waste characterization study by DSNY, which is a few years old now, so it might be a little adjusted from this, but I think still, still very important to look at. So if all businesses diverted all three of these streams, this would add up to roughly an 89% diversion rate for commercial waste. So it just shows you that we really can get to 90% diversion by diverting these three streams. So getting into specifically takeout waste. First of all, I want to mention that plastic is the fastest growing form of packaging in the U.S. according to NRDC, which is definitely not a good thing. Upstream, takeout container waste is a major problem. It's very fossil fuel intensive. The current system for producing takeout food containers is not sustainable. Production of takeout containers involves, of course, extraction of fossil fuels. We all know that takeout containers are made from petroleum products. Oftentimes manufacturing of takeout containers is powered by fossil fuels, and then of course transporting the takeout containers is also fueled by barges, planes, or trucks, which are fueled by fossil fuels. We are currently in a system of make, use, dispose, which is not a sustainable system. And then downstream, of course, takeout waste is also a major problem, creating greenhouse gas emissions, air pollution, and other toxics. New Yorkers are only recycling about 17% of total waste generated. The remainder goes to landfills and incinerators. So collecting and transporting this waste results in air pollution and greenhouse gas emissions, as I already mentioned. New York City sends waste to landfills very far away, such as Seneca Meadows landfill, which is 270 miles away from New York City, Virginia landfills, which are more than 400 miles away. And, you know, landfilling, if you look at landfilling first, U.S. municipal solid waste landfills are the third largest source of human-related methane emissions, accounting for about 18.2% of U.S. human emissions in 2014, according to the U.S. EPA. Landfilling also produces a toxic leachate, which is a significant threat to surface water and groundwater. And of course, it takes up very valuable space that could be otherwise used. As far as incineration, New York City sends a portion of its waste, both commercial and residential, to New Jersey incinerators. Incineration generates emissions that contribute to air pollution and climate change, including carbon dioxide, nitrous oxide, ammonia, and others, depending on the incineration technology used. Incineration also generates toxic incinerator bottom ash, which does have uses, such as in concrete. But the problem with that is that once that structure comes down, whatever structure the concrete was used for, you have the exact same toxic ash. So that's really not a solution. So, you know, takeout waste isn't just filling our landfills and incinerators, it's also filling our beaches and waterways, as Rachel mentioned before. Single-use food and beverage packaging is a prime source of the estimated 269,000 tons of plastic pollution currently floating around in the world's oceans, according to NRDC. According to a recent study by Ocean Conservancy, takeout food containers and wrappers are the #2 most prolific litter on our beaches. So really a tremendous problem. So now into the solution. You know, recycling takeout containers is not the solution. Many containers are destined, for recycling end up as litter and wind up in our waterways, as we've already stated. But also some takeout containers, such as EPS foam, better known as styrofoam, are not recyclable in most places. I was in my neighborhood market, little market this morning, and literally the styrofoam takeout containers were stacked up to the ceiling, which is so disappointing because you just know that they're all destined for landfill and incineration. Recycling is a very fossil fuel intensive process, from collection to transport to processing, shipping, etc. This all generates greenhouse gas emissions. And often materials are downcycled. Downcycling is a recycling practice that involves breaking an item down into its component elements. Once the elements or materials are recovered, they are reused if possible, but usually as a lower value product. So, you know, recycling is obviously here to stay because it's a necessity right now, but there are far better options, and those options are waste reduction and reuse. So the solution here is really to reduce takeout waste by reusing takeout containers. We want to encourage restaurants and their patrons to switch to durable, reusable containers that can be washed and used again and again and again. And just a couple tips on this. We want to remember to pack a clean container in the morning. You know, maybe even buy each of your family members their own reusable takeout container, and then spread the word about reusable takeout containers to friends and colleagues. We really want to have a total shift here to bringing our own containers and away from this mentality of this single-use, you know, just headed to the restaurant and just always every single day buying a new single-use container that ends up being disposed and likely ends up in landfill or incineration. So I also want to mention, as part of the solution, the circular economy. I mentioned before that we are currently in a system of make, use, dispose. We want to be moving towards a circular economy, which aims to decouple economic growth from the use of natural resources and ecosystems by using those resources more effectively. So in this model, in the circular economy model, you would have the takeout containers be manufactured, they would be sold by the retailer, used by the user, reused and repaired hopefully multiple times, over and over and over again, until finally they reach their end of life, which everything does eventually reach its end of life, but then it's recycled and redesigned into either new takeout containers or some other type of product. So this is really where we want to be going. So I want to move on to how restaurants in New York City can make the switch. So we want to cut down on waste. Restaurants have an opportunity to cut down on waste and reduce costs by providing customers with a reusable takeout container for refill and purchasing less single-use takeaway containers. New York City's Department of Health and Mental Hygiene Health Code now allows restaurants to provide customers with reusable food containers returnable for refill as long as they do one of the following. They can either wash and sanitize the containers before the restaurant refills them, or they can write a standard operating procedure demonstrating that there's no cross-contamination. And I'll get into this in a little more detail in the next slides. So this is the actual health code itself, 81.46. You can see the link below. Excuse me. I won't obviously read this word for word because there's a lot of information here, but the good news is that with beverage containers, consumers can already bring their own personal beverage container, a coffee cup, a water bottle, whatever it may be, for refill at any establishment in New York City, as long as that establishment is making sure that they're not having situations with cross-contamination. So that's good news. You can bring your own personal, coffee mug, water bottle, and other beverage, other things for beverages. As far as other containers, including takeout containers, what currently restaurants can sell a returnable, refillable container. The goal is to work with the Department of Health to allow residents to have the choice to either, number one, bring back the restaurant's container for refill if the restaurant offers this, or two, bring their own personal containers for refill. So we do need to work to get there. But the good news is that today, restaurants can still make the switch, and I'll walk you through that here. And I know that the next speakers will be speaking a lot about this too, specifically what they are doing in their restaurants. So restaurants, again, can provide customers with a returnable container that they can then wash and sanitize on site before it's refilled for reuse, or they can write a procedure showing how the restaurant will avoid contamination when filling the reusable takeout container. They'll need to then submit that procedure to DOHMH. Bureau of Food Safety and Community Sanitation, and the information is provided here. And if people need this information after the call, we could definitely provide it to you. Carrie Crane from the Department of Health and Mental Hygiene was kind enough to provide her contact information for questions. And then, once you submit the plan and you get approval from DOHMH, restaurants will want to train their staff on how to implement the plan, communicate to staff that they can provide customers with reusable takeaway containers for refill, communicate this information to your customers, of course, and then provide incentive to reuse. This is a great opportunity to provide some sort of discount when the customer comes back with the refillable container, which will incentivize them to use it again and again and again. So I want to mention that there are other benefits to reducing takeout waste, not just the typical reducing your environmental footprint, which is of course true. But beyond that, there's also a corporate social responsibility benefit. Social and environmental are so closely tied together that there's certainly that benefit. And then there's a cost savings opportunity, which I'll get to in the next slide. There's public relations and marketing opportunities. Of course, helping the city reach its zero waste goals. And then if you are a publicly traded company, if there was a chain restaurant that was publicly traded, of course you could benefit from shareholder approval of these activities. So cutting costs from reducing takeout waste. There are a couple different opportunities for restaurants to cut their costs from these activities. One is switching from use of single-use items to reusables up and down the supply chain. And I'll give you some examples of this. For a retailer up the supply chain, switching to reusable pallets, for example, for deliveries could result in a significant cost savings. Down the supply chain, switching to durable plates, cutlery, and cloth napkins can save money. We are seeing some examples of this around the city. And of course, that's because you're not having to buy your single-use items every single month. You're instead purchasing reusables that you are dishwashing again and again and again. And then, of course, buying less single-use takeaway containers could result in a savings. As customers start to make the switch to reusable, refillable containers, you would hopefully have to buy less of the single-use takeaway containers. And then finally, if you are on a volume-based contract with your hauler, as you start to see your volume of waste go down because more customers are using reusables, you would then see a reduction in your hauling, your collection and disposal costs because your volume of waste has gone down. I just want to mention that the Manhattan Swab does have this initiative to increase reusable takeout containers in New York City. We will be holding an event with restaurants and the Department of Health and Mental Hygiene in 2017 to help increase the use of reusable containers. We are also planning on partnering to do some public education. So please check back on our website for more information at manhattanswab.org. Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so it's Rachel back, and there's about 100 million questions, so let's choose one. For Sarah, that's a comment. Would it be possible to have some sort of thick butcher paper liner system to place food on the liner and then the liner in the container that the customer brings?
Yeah, so any questions that are very, very specific like that, I cannot answer. I will have to direct you to the Department of Health and Mental Hygiene. Again, Carrie Crane generously gave her information. She's happy to answer questions. Of course, I don't want her to be bombarded, but any really targeted questions, from restaurants directly, please send to her, and circle back with Rachel, please, for her information.
Yeah, and maybe another webinar at another time where Carrie can speak would be a great idea. Here's another one, a little less specific. I support bringing your own for leftovers to take home, but this isn't practical and in many cases not allowed by health departments for fast food chains. What are your recommendations for that sector of food service business?
When you say take home, do you mean when you're eating in a fine dining establishment and you have leftovers? I'm assuming that's what you mean.
Yes, leftovers.
Leftovers, that's what she meant, from a fine dining establishment?
Fine dining? I don't know. Maybe I should choose a different question.
Well, I would just say really quickly on that, I don't think the Department of Health would stop any patron from bringing your own takeout container to a sit-down restaurant. Let's say you have leftovers at your sit-down restaurant, you have your reusable takeout container in your bag. There's no issue with you putting that food in your own container, right? Because there's no cross-contamination there.
I do that all the time, and then if there is cross-contamination, it's only your problem.
Right, exactly. They're washing that dish anyway.
Yeah. Well, Sarah, thank you so much. Let's go to the next speaker, Nick Kenner. Nick is the CEO and co-founder of the fast casual chain Just Salad, which currently operates 31 locations in Manhattan, Chicago, Kansas, Jersey City, Hong Kong, and Dubai. Along with his childhood best friend, Kenner opened the first Just Salad location at 320 Park Avenue in May of 2006. Before founding Just Salad, Kenner worked for 2 years as an assistant trader at hedge fund Excess Capital Management. He was inspired by the lack of options that his usual midtown lunch routine offered. He began developing a concept that would make healthy and delicious salads more accessible. Today, Just Salad operates over 30 locations internationally with more than 1,000 employees and has been ranked one of the top 5 delivery restaurants in the world by Grubhub. Nick was named to Inc.'s 30 Under 30 America's Coolest Entrepreneurs list in 2007. He's an active board member of the Kenner Family Research Fund. Nick, welcome. And George, can you please pass the controls to Nick?
You can talk now, Nick.
Great. Thank you, Rachel. I assume the slide deck is up for everyone?
Yes, we can see your slides.
Great. Well, first of all, appreciate Rachel and the EPA for putting this together. I'm a big fan of WasteWise. It's an amazing program and highly recommend it for anyone listening in that's not participating, if you're not already. So yeah, I'd love to tell you guys about Just Salad and our reusable bowl program. I'll give you kind of a little background on how we started and how the reusable bowl came into play for us. So we started in 2006. We're New York City based, and we now have 31 locations. Obviously started with one location, and from day one we wanted to have a reusable salad bowl. And I would say in the early days about 95% of our sales were from salads. And we wanted the reusable bowl not because necessarily we wanted to be the most eco-friendly, progressive concept, but actually it came about in a different way. We were thinking about salads when we were starting our business plan and the packaging that we wanted for them, and we wanted really cool packaging. And as we developed this packaging, we realized that we were dedicating a lot of plastic to this packaging, and so we didn't feel comfortable having this bowl be thrown out. So we thought, why don't we make it reusable? And we also realized that if we're going to make it reusable and we want to expect people to reuse it, we've got to give them an incentive to do so. So that was kind of the origins of it. And initially, all our salad bowls were reusable, but we quickly realized in the first few months that there are certain people that just weren't going to reuse it, and they were wasting an inordinate amount of plastic as a result. So we then gave the option of disposable bowls and reusable bowls. This kind of just gives an idea of where the locations are. The ones in the United States are company-owned. The ones internationally are franchised. And at all 31 locations, the reusable bowl is used. And we have certain locations that are in the base of massive high-rises where up to about 30% of our customers are reusing their salad bowl because they don't really have to carry it too far. We have other locations that might be more transient or tourist-related where we aren't as successful with the reusable bowl program. So kind of just to give you an idea of the setting in which the reusable bowl is taking place. And if you could see the picture on the left, you'll see these green and white bowls. Those are an example of the reusable bowls. And so, and you'll see here the picture on the left, you could see at this location a big sign when you come in says reuse a bowl. And then you can see the orange bowls below it. And it's a big part of our culture. It's a big part of who we are. So another big part of the reusable bowl program for us is we use it as a way to add value to our customers. So our mission is being dedicated to serving healthy meals at an affordable cost. And that starts with salads that have proteins at $7.99. We have a loyalty app. But a big part of that also is our reusable bowl program. As anyone who purchases the reusable bowl for $1 will also receive a free portion of cheese or premium like an avocado or 2 free essentials. So we often say we're allowing our customers to save plastic and save money at the same time. And so the reusable bowl is part of something bigger for us, which is making sure that we're taking eco-friendly initiatives in everything we do. So I think, like I said, the reusable bowl started as a way to offer cool packaging, but we quickly realized that we were attracting customers that really cared about the environment and wanted more from us, and that made us want more, and that made us want to go the extra length, and not just reusable bowls, but other aspects of the business. So I'm not going to list off all of these, but these are some of the other ways that we feel we've been able to make a difference on our environmental impact, and we continue to search for more ways, better ways to reduce our impact every day. So the bowl program has been extremely successful. We save over 75,000 pounds of plastic per year, and I sometimes say that number and kind of, people's eyes glaze over, but that's a real number. I mean, we're making a real dent, especially in New York City, somewhat in Chicago as we grow out that market, but 75,000 pounds is equal to about a high-rise made of plastic, and we're saving the city of New York that every year through this reusable bowl program. And again, just to give the details of the program again, you can buy this bowl. In this picture, it's purple, for $1 at any location, and you receive 2 free essentials or free cheese with every use, or free premium like avocado. And it's really our customers that are making this happen. They're the ones who are coming in every day with the bowl, saving the plastic, and it is an expensive program for us. I mean, the cost of a disposable plastic bowl is cheaper, frankly, than the amount of food that we're giving away. So it isn't necessarily the cheapest program for us to administer, but I do think that the brand equity and the culture and the customer loyalty that's created with this program far outweighs the cost. So a couple details on the program. It is, I don't want to fool anyone, I mean, it is a really difficult process to undertake, but again, I think it is completely worth it. First there's coming up with the design of the reusable product. Then you actually have to go and test it. And then once you approve the test, you create, assuming it's a plastic reusable container, you have to go create a mold. That can cost anywhere from $10,000 to $100,000 for mold setup. And then you have to obviously decide on the exact material, obviously only having food safety approved materials in play. And also now another thing that needs to be done is coordinating with local Department of Health officials to make sure that you have a standard operating procedure or HACCP plan in place. And actually, I think Sarah was talking about that earlier, where the New York City Department of Health Code requires an SOP or HACCP plan for any reusable bowl program, and that it needs to be detailed. We probably went through 3 revisions with them to make sure that they were satisfied, and it is audited as well, which is a good thing because we really want reusable programs in general to be looked at as a safe program for food use as well. And in our 10 years of having the reusable bowl, not one time have we had any issue related to food safety with the reusable bowls. And a big reason is that is the customer has the bowl, they own the bowl, they're eating out of their own bowl, they have every incentive in the world to keep that safe. But in addition to that, I think the real key of the reusable bowl program is eliminating cross-contamination. And so for us, when someone comes in with a salad bowl, we actually don't touch it or don't take that bowl until the very end, and in which case it's put on, we have a black plate, so it never touches a food surface, and that black plate is only used for these reusable bowls. And we have a ton of other procedures that are in the HACCP plan, but I think the bottom line, the big picture is you really have to avoid any cross-contamination. So another way of looking at that is the coffee shops. I think a lot of coffee shops have had successful reusable mug programs. And the key with that is when you have a reusable coffee mug, not to let that coffee mug touch the nozzle in which the coffee is coming out. And that same concept applies to just salad when it's doing our reusable bowl of salads. So just, to touch on the success of the program for us, in hopes that some people listening could also have their own success with their reusable programs. We've saved tons of plastic gear that we spoke about. Our customers become walking advertisements, and our landlords appreciate it. One landlord in particular, we're in 30 Rock Center, they have a ton of garbage, and the fact that we're saving on these sizable disposable plastic containers really goes a far way with them. As it should, because eliminating plastic is not just good for the environment, but logistically also makes a lot of these loading dock situations in these high-rises a lot easier for them to manage with reduced garbage. So I think in general, also just to take a step back, there's been a lot of greenwashing, in my opinion, in the fast food, fast casual space, and a lot of it's been done by plastic manufacturers that describe their products as eco-friendly when they're simply not. Maybe they're biodegradable in one facility in the middle of nowhere. But the reusable program, there's no arguing its benefits. And I think, it's worth trying to do anything you can to implement some type of program, because it really makes a massive difference. And you could see just some pictures of our customers here. And these aren't paid advertisements. These are people, customers submitting this through Instagram, Twitter, or Facebook. And people love the bowl. They love using it. It makes them feel like they're part of a community with like-minded people. And they like to be walking into stores where they see other people who care about the same thing and have the same values. So that's it, and I guess we'll open it up for questions.
There are so many questions. We're just going to take two for now. Somebody says, so are people in New York City walking a bunch of blocks with their big salad bowls?
Yeah, that's a good question. But yeah, come to Midtown New York at lunchtime, and yes, you will probably see someone with an orange, white, or green reusable bowl. So for women, it's easier, honestly, because they have often purses that they can put them in. And for guys, it is kind of more of a statement, because you got to walk with it out there, showing everyone. And some people honestly do the walk of shame with it, and other people walk with it very proud. Honestly, I don't care. I just want people reusing it, because nothing makes me happier than seeing someone on the street with one of these bowls in New York or Chicago, because it means that they're a fan for life and they're saving plastic.
Well, I would imagine most people are carrying it in a bag, probably, right?
No, I mean, I'm not sure where your office is, but you definitely see a lot of people on the street just carrying it without a bag. Just the only thing they're carrying is the bowl itself.
Okay, one more question. Does Mr. Kenner license the technology he used to create his obviously successful bowl? Why keep reinventing the wheel? Yes, I do understand that health department regulations differ across the nation.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest, the technology is not that sophisticated. I mean, I think the hardest part is, look, it's an expensive program for a company, so it's really hard if you're an existing company to adapt this program and know you're going to probably lose money doing it is difficult. But if you're starting up a concept from scratch, I think the hardest part is just going through the design phase, going through the testing phase, getting it developed. Then once you get it developed, implementing a procedure that's acceptable to the Department of Buildings, and most importantly, making sure that you have an operations team that is carrying that out day in and day out. I don't think it's not sophisticated, but it's not easy. It's hard. but it's not sophisticated, so I don't think for us, you know, it's not something we're looking to license. We would love for people to do it without making money off of it.
Yeah. Well, I just also want to say, I mean, it's expensive and it was difficult for you, but the city is aware of the obstacles, and the city is aware of the need to make this process easier for other restaurants going forward, and so discussions like that are taking place. So hopefully it's going to be getting much easier soon.
Well, yeah, no, and I just want to say, I mean, the New York City Department of Health is not the difficult part. I mean, that they obviously need to focus and make sure that there's not cross-contamination, which they should be doing, and they are. I think the difficulty from an operator standpoint is developing the bowl or whatever the reusable container might be in the first place, and then making sure they're executing it properly. But
Okay, so we'll have more.
Just to end on a positive note, it can be done, and when it is done, I think customers truly appreciate it, and it can be a huge, you know, incremental business positive.
Don't worry about ending on a positive note. There are plenty more questions for you, but for now, let's move on to our third and final speaker, Chloe Vichot. She is founder of Ancolie, the Epicurean Canteen. Since 2012, Chloe has been focusing on living her dream and opening her own food business. She went back to school, starting in the kitchen with 2 diplomas in French and Italian culinary techniques at the International Culinary Center. Then she took a culinary management degree from the Institute of Culinary Education, where she won the Leadership Award. In early 2015, she quit her full-time job in finance to work at Michelin-starred 11 Madison Park, where she experienced fine dining and hospitality at its best. Having that experience under her belt, she felt she was finally ready to open her dream place, an elegant and inviting oasis that offered real home cooking in glass jars. Somebody's got some background noise there. Somebody's got some very significant background noise there, so please check. Purpose and embracing it. Sensibility. Chloe, are you there?
I'm here. Hello?
Hi. Hi. I hope that whoever was making all that noise has gone into mute, but Chloe, please begin.
Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. It's such an honor to be part of an amazing panel and be sharing experience with people that are trying to do the right thing, and I think together we're really going to make a positive impact on the environment, so I'm very excited. As Rachel mentioned, we recently opened our restaurant that's called Ancolie, and Ancolie has and you can see a picture of the store at the bottom of the screen. We have a warm and cozy atmosphere. We serve coffee and tea, fresh food prepared daily, and we use local and seasonal ingredients. But you can be wondering, you know, what makes us different? Well, you know, as Nick as other people, we were tired of this huge amount of trash, of plastic that's all over the ocean and everywhere, so we wanted to do something different. So we decided to say no to plastic, and we only use glass. So in our store, all the food we serve are served in glass jars. So you have here an example of the salads we serve in the restaurant. We also serve food and a couple of warm items, and everything comes in glass jars. Obviously, as Nick mentioned, getting the glass ready was a bit challenging because a regular mason jar is too narrow to eat out of it, so I had to design my own jar that was wider but also easier to open and close. So we had to go through the building process, and it took over 6 months. I think overall it was a 9-month process, so it was very long. And I did a Kickstarter campaign to help me finance the whole process, because it's true that it was very costly. And as you know, I only have one store, so it was very hard for me to come up with the upfront money, but we were very successful, and we raised over $50,000. So I think a lot of people are sensitive to what we're doing, and we're trying to help, and even people that don't live in New York. So people from around the world were excited about the project and wanted to help out. But what else do we do than those reusable packaging? Well, we recycle them, obviously. So as for just salad, every time you bring a jar back, you get $1 credit on your next purchase. And in January, which was our third month of being open, we recycled 170 jars, which is 20% of what we sold. And as just salad, if you come in the village, you will see a lot of people that are carrying around their jars and bringing it back to the restaurants. And in fact, sometimes I have people that come and show up with 6 or 8 jars because, you know, they don't want to take them every day, but during the weekend or on a particular day, they just take a big bag and they take everything at once. And every one of them would get a credit, so we don't limit the number of credit you can get on one purchase. We also, as was mentioned before, give a discount when you reuse your own cup for coffee. And again, here a disposable cup costs us less than 50 cents, but we're trying to show that this is important to us, and we're giving a bigger discount than what it's actually costing us because we think that it's very important to reduce the waste that we're creating. We also have this sign to limit the amount of bags and utensils that we have in the store. And so every time we consciously ask our customer if they need a bag, so they have to ask themselves, do I really need a bag? And often they say no. And if they need a fork or a utensil. So we want to make sure that if we give it to them, they ask for it and they're actually going to use it. We're also doing a lot of effort to reduce our food waste. So for example, we use all the parts of the chicken, we use the meat, we use the skin, and we also use the bone to do broth. We do a lot of applesauce. We started reusing the skin after a little while because we realized that we had all those apple skins, and so we started to put them in the oven and sell them as crisp, which people love. Every time we close, so when it was for Thanksgiving or for Christmas and we knew we were going to have leftover food, we made sure that we gave it to the stores that are around us that work a lot with us and that are good customers. Every night when I have leftovers of coffee, for example, I give it to the music studio next door because I know they work late and they're always happy to have extra coffee. And obviously all the vegetables that is getting bad or could get bad, we make sure that we put it in a soup so it can be, so we're not wasting anything. The food that we cannot use and the scrap and all of this, we do compost. So we have 2 types of compost in the store. All the natural, so food scrap, but also chicken bones once we've used it for the broth and we can no longer use it. We have a pickup twice a week and it goes by bicycle in a garden in the East Village. So we're very proud of being part of this effort. Everything else, which is all of our napkins, utensils and coffee cups for people that are using to-go cups but throwing it away in our store, those we compost with an industrial compost and we have a partner that we work with. Obviously we recycle in the store. We don't have any plastic, but the water bottles are in glass, so we recycle them as well. We did a lot of effort as well on saving water and energy. We only have electric hand dryer in the restroom, and we have green power REC for the back end of the electricity. In the restroom and all the storage, we have motion detectors. In the we have a lot of foot pedal for the water to make sure that the water doesn't stay on all the time. So we're really trying to be cautious about everything that we spent. We also use green chemicals and pest controls and refurbished material. So all of this helped us to obtain a 4-star rating with the Green Restaurant Association. And in fact, if you go online on our website, www.ancolie.co, all the way at the bottom you have a link that says we are green, and you can go and click and see exactly for energy, food, water and waste how we got those points and what we're doing. So there's only 3 restaurants in New York that have this rating, so we're very proud to be one of them. And also we're proud to be as transparent as we are, and anybody can see what we're actually doing for that. But we still have challenges that we're trying to work on, because it's not easy. We have to educate our customers. Some people still don't understand why we're using glass and ask us for, no, but we want it to go. I'm like, yeah, well, to go comes in the glass. Well, I don't want the glass. I don't want to carry it. And so it takes a little bit of time. I think being downtown in the village makes a big difference, because people really care and they take the time to bring it back. Midtown, I don't think would have been a good idea, in particular for the first location. We also need to educate our staff, which I didn't mention in this slide, but that also took a little bit of time. But they are very excited to be part of the restaurant. And in fact, if you look at our trash when we take it out 3 times a week, similar to Nick in Rockefeller Center, I mean, right now we just opened, so we don't have that much volume, but we only have 1 black bag 3 times a week, which is nothing. And we do have cardboard and we do have packaging, so that's something we need to work with our providers to make sure that the packaging that we receive from them can be maybe reused in a way. Obviously right now we're too small to do that, but we're hoping as we get bigger to be able to work on partnership with them and use as much reusable crate as possible. Also, a last point that I want to leave to everyone is respecting the regulation. For example, plastic gloves is, I think, maybe half of my trash right now, because every time you're making a salad or you're making something that is going to go directly to the customer, you need to use plastic gloves. And I think that if you teach your staff how to wash their hands properly, and you see it in sushi restaurant, the sushi master, they just use their bare hand, I think that could be very efficient, often more efficient than a dirty glove that you don't really feel, because there's plastic on your hands, so you don't really notice that they are dirty. So I think that's something that could be interesting to discuss in the future. But feel free to check our website and our Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter for more information on what we're doing.
Chloe, thank you very much. I got a whole bunch of questions here. We'll just take 2 specifically for Chloe, and then we'll move more into general questions for everybody. A quick one, I think, are the tops of the containers plastic?
No, they're not plastic, it's aluminum. I thought about a lot of different options, but right now the easiest and the safest was aluminum.
Okay, and now here's one that's interesting. This is from Kamiko, who you met, so I know what she means. I'm going to kind of elaborate. She says, would it be possible to use the squarish glass Pyrex containers, which are sort of the same shape and volume of many rectangular containers? And you use the mason jars, and it's really convenient for salads and stuff, but if you had something that needed to be laid out flat, yeah, would it be possible to use those sort of squarish glass Pyrex containers?
Sure, I mean, there's no reason why. Obviously, we spend quite a bit amount of money and time on developing those jars because they are easy to stack, they're easy to use. And one thing that I forgot to mention, one big advantage of glass is obviously aesthetically it looks very nice because all the food is presented in layer. And in fact, you realize that you can present a lot of dish and a lot of things in this round container. So you just need to think about it sometimes a different way, and it's a deconstructed recipe. But a lot of things that I want to try end up working very well in this shape. But I'm actually open to using other things as well, absolutely.
Okay. So there are so many questions that I can't actually read them all and decide which are the best ones, so I'm going to start throwing out some questions. Sarah, it seems like this one would be appropriate for you. Does New York City have a recycling market for plastic-lined paper cups? Wondering how those are factoring into the percentages presented in terms of potential recycling.
So my understanding from the Department of Sanitation is plastic-lined paper cups are not recyclable. Those are not recyclable, unfortunately, but if they are paper, just purely paper cups, and they are tearable, like you can take the cup and you can tear it, then that would be recyclable. But no, plastic-lined cups are not recyclable, unfortunately. Was there another part of that question?
No, that's it, but I have a lot more. Here's just a comment. Somebody says rats are a big problem in New York City for businesses and residents, and I truly believe the rat problem can be solved if we reduce waste. That's a good comment.
Yes, and can I make one comment on that? The brown bins provided by the Department of Sanitation, many people have seen them, I'm sure, have a nice orange snap on them. If you are participating in the residential organics, curbside program, those are designed to be rat-proof. So just an FYI on that because of that snap on top.
Okay. How's a comparison of landfilling versus washing reusable containers been done in terms of environmental impact?
You want me to take
Sarah,
that?
do you want to try that one? Sorry?
Yeah, go ahead. I'll go ahead. I am not familiar with any particular study that has been done, but as you can see from the statistics that I showed on landfills, and for so many reasons, I can't imagine that washing would be anywhere near the environmental impact of landfilling.
In fact, Sarah, this is Chloe. If I can tag along, restaurant dishwasher have very short cycles, so it's actually 70 seconds to 90 seconds. So that use much less water and chemicals than a regular home dishwasher. So I think also that helps a lot.
Oh, that's so interesting. I didn't know that.
Didn't either. That's great.
Okay. Well, here's a comment for anybody who has something. She says, I tried to get a latte in my own mug with Wardia recently, and they wouldn't do it, citing cross-contamination. It happened again in Houston's airport. Any ideas why?
It's Nick from.
Nick? Okay.
No, I would just say it's Nick from Just Salad. I mean, I think unless your operations team has dealt or has procedure for dealing with the reusable program, I think most of the team on the who's on the front line, so to speak, in the restaurant, they're fearful of doing something that could get them in trouble with the Department of Health. So I think it's really on the leaders of whatever company you would try to go to at either airport to talk with their staff and their teammates about how to handle reusable mugs, because without any procedure at all, it's probably not going to happen.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, this is not so much a question as a helpful comment. This person says, what I do for restaurants who won't use my container, I just ask them to plate the food and I just slide the food into my container myself. That's an interesting way to handle that. Now somebody says, I think this was while Nick was presenting, she says, what about the increased labor and water costs?
Well, we don't actually, at Just Salad, we don't wash or take possession of the bowl. Then there's two ways to handle the reusable bowl program. One is taking ownership of it, and the other is making sure you're essentially never really touching it. And we chose the latter because we felt that was easier to ensure cross-contamination or lack of cross-contamination, and we also felt that it wouldn't slow down our operations as much.
Okay, there are a lot of questions here that are related really to life cycle analysis. People want to know whether you've calculated the additional costs and also energy impact of labor and water and energy and equipment compared to the use of reusables. That's not just for you, Nick, that's overall. It is a complicated topic, and what Chloe said a minute ago about dishwashers in restaurants being really short cycle, that's very interesting. But I'm not aware of an official life cycle analysis that has been done.
I don't know. For Just Salad, it is not that complicated because we're not using any extra water. So, in our case, It's pretty simple. We have a disposable plastic bowl that's made of recycled plastic for people that don't want the reusable bowl. The reusable bowl is twice the amount of plastic as a disposable bowl. So each time a customer reuses that bowl more than twice, they're saving plastic. There's no extra energy or resources that are going into one versus the other.
Okay, here's one for Nick. Do you charge for the disposable bowls as a way to incentivize the use of the reusable bowls?
I wish. No. I don't think our customers would get away with that. I think even if it came from being genuine, it would probably be taken the wrong way by our customers, and not necessarily a way for us to divert people towards reusable bowls, but a way for us to make more money.
Now, Nick, you said you have a restaurant in Kansas. Our EPA person in the Kansas office says, what city in Kansas?
Manhattan, Kansas, baby. Kansas State University.
Oh,
So
Kansas State.
It's on the campus of Kansas State University, and you will find the reusable bowls there.
Okay. Somebody else says, for Nick, have you looked into franchising in Ohio? I'm interested in knowing the reaction of the state health department, if so.
We honestly we have not looked into franchising in Ohio, but hope to open stores company owned there one day.
Okay. Somebody says, can the EPA create a resource for restaurants that are willing to share food container designs so that other communities and businesses can use them? In Arizona, we'd like to make this a regional effort. I don't think we're ready to commit to that at this stage, but maybe we can, help compile some sort of central resource. I don't think it'd be at EPA at this point. Somebody says, can New York City outlaw straws or make it required that they have to ask for them? In fact, could they use that for all disposables? Sarah, do you want to try that?
That would, of course, require a conversation with City Council. I think it's a great idea. If someone wants to draft some legislation, propose it. I think we all agree that straws are a major problem. None of us really touched on that, but I know that if you look at some of the trash-free waters, material that those are also littering beaches and waterways all over the world as well. So it's a great idea.
Right. I saw a horrible picture of a straw jammed up a poor turtle's nose. Okay. For Chloe, I guess I don't think it was clear to our audience whether your jars, when people bring the jars back, do you wash them and reuse them, or are you actually recycling them?
We wash them and we reuse them. So unlike Nick, we don't make everything to order. The salads are already prepared. So when they give it back to us, we re-wash them, re-sanitize them, and then they will have another life as another salad or another soup.
Okay. All right. I got a long comment here. This is Chris with Rethink Disposable, a waste reduction initiative of Clean Water Fund. Rethink Disposables also reduces single-use disposable foodware item use, and our pilot program was funded by the EPA. I appreciate Just Salad and Ancolie's stories, and I want to know if you have developed any case studies of businesses who have participated in WasteWise. Do you have any examples of businesses who have successfully implemented a reusable container program without having the upfront capital available that Just Salad and Ancolie had available? Well, I personally don't feel equipped to answer that yet. I'm not aware of any case studies that have been fully developed at this stage. No, I think that the attention to this topic has been a little bit limited in the past, and hopefully that's going to ramp up. So hopefully the case studies that you want are going to be produced in the future. I don't know if anybody else has anything better. Yes?
This is Chloe. Just to jump on that, I found a lot of my funding through crowdfunding, so I think that people are sensitive to what we're trying to do. And if you don't have the money yourself, you can ask people, and with Kickstarter, Indiegogo, and a lot of crowdfunding website, now you can really find a way to finance your restaurant or your dream, even if you don't have it yourself.
Cool. Okay. Chloe, here's another one for you. Somebody wanted some clarification about the plastic gloves. She says, is it mandatory to use the plastic gloves, or is there a workaround if you train staff adequately to wash hands?
Not that I know of. I think it's mandatory.
Okay.
It's Nick from Just Salad. Yeah, it is mandatory, but I do think Chloe brings up a good point where, you know, sometimes if you're wearing a plastic glove, you're less likely to know that your glove is dirtier than your hands. So I think it makes a lot of sense. The problem is it really would take a very strong, thoughtful leader of a major department of health to actually come out and challenge that. But I think if they did, I think obviously restaurants would support it. It would just, you know, the Department of Health would then need some type of way to measure whether people were truly washing their hands or not, and I think that's the hard part.
Exactly, and if there was one litigation where somebody actually got sick and somebody's hands were, you know, proven to be dirty, it would set everybody back years.
Yeah, but if you think about it, there's no way for the Department of Health to know when they come in whether the gloves are clean or not. So
That's true.
It's a weird it's a weird situation, but it is a lot of wasted plastic in every restaurant across the country.
And money.
Yeah.
Here's another comment on that topic from somebody else. Utensils can be used in place of bare hands for more activities that require gloves, but as a food safety regulator, plastic gloves will not leave the food code when it comes to ready-to-eat food. Even clean hands are not totally clean. So it's just somebody's comment. General question. Pizza boxes, any way to avoid or at least prevent grease contamination? Oil is FF intensive. Are there other ideas that work?
I can touch on that for a minute. We like to recommend that people cut out the greasy part of the pizza box and recycle the rest.
Good idea.
Yeah, and depending on your composter, they may still be able to take that piece of the greasy piece if the cardboard isn't too thick. Again, you have to ask your composting organization, but certainly cut off those greasy pieces and you can still recycle the entire rest of the box.
Okay, that's awesome. Okay, then somebody says, can you touch upon compostable utensils, because the corn plastic is often not wanted by commercial recycling facilities, so they end up not being able to be recycled or composted.
This is Sarah again. I can start. I know we always try and recommend to our clients that they go with durables first, or cutlery, actual reusable cutlery, because so many compost facilities really cannot handle the supposedly compostable utensils. I think there are some that are taking it, but it takes a very long time to break down, and I know most compost facilities are having challenges with the supposedly compostable cutlery.
I agree with you, Sarah. I think one of the major concerns is to make sure that every decision you make in your restaurant, you make sure you talk to your hauler to make sure that they can approve it. We have real cutlery for people that eat in store, but for people that take it to go, we decided to use compostable, even though, of course, not every office has a compostable trash and have a hauler that can accept it. But that's a big challenge, and it would be good to find a solution on that as well.
Right, and we often debate it's almost better to give your customers perhaps the plastic ones that you know are recyclable. In New York City's commercial, commercial obviously is private haulers, but in the residential stream, they can take those hard plastic utensils for recycling. And most of the time, and now businesses are required to recycle the plastics. So there is a debate there, which is better.
Okay. Sarah, here's a question for you. Has SWAB discussed or proposed any policies to encourage bring your own, like a mandatory charge for takeout cups or foodware? New York City had passed a fee for bags. This is a similar concept.
So again, that would be a fee for on takeout containers. You know, it's certainly
That's
a good
what
idea.
Yeah, you know what? Somebody is unmuted and making a good deal of noise. Can you check that if you're not speaking that you're on mute, please? Sorry, Sarah.
That's okay. You know, it's not something that we've been discussing at the SWAB, but I think it's a great idea because we do, you know, occasionally propose legislation or other ideas to City Hall, to City Council. So, you know, it's an interesting one, but not currently something we're discussing.
Sure. Okay. For the business owners, thank you. Great inspiration. What would you recommend are the top 3 selling points that someone can bring up with food service businesses to change their operations to practice source reduction? Who wants to take that?
It's Nick from Just Salad. I mean, I guess there's a couple different bullet points. One would be, you know, in some cases for some companies, the cost of the reusable program is less than the disposable product that you'd otherwise be purchasing. So there is a potential for cost savings depending on the concept. And then obviously there's a possibility of increased revenue as a result of customers that want to participate in such a program. And then I think the third bullet point is hopefully, you know, as a company, you want to do better for the environment and for the planet, and that obviously a reasonable program helps that.
Here's a comment. Somebody says there are a lot of studies and researches, a lot of research on life cycle analysis about this particular topic. This is Samantha Summers. She offers her email. She says, happy to share if you email me, which I will do. I don't know, Samantha, if there's a way that we can make, George, is there a way that we can make her email address public if it's not already?
I will copy and paste it and send it to everyone via chat.
Okay. Okay, that's helpful, Samantha. Thank you. Okay. Another comment. This is Chris again with Rethink Disposable. Yes, seconding Chloe. If you look at the life cycle of the product, a reusable item, if washed 1,000 times, uses less water than all the single-use disposable items it replaces in its lifetime. Okay. A question from somebody in Oregon. Portland, Oregon has a styrofoam ban, but Corvallis does not. I'd like to get a takeout program here to reduce the styrofoam waste. So do I need to work with our businesses, citizens, health codes to get such a program here?
I guess I can touch on that, Sarah. I'm not familiar with your municipality out there, so I'm not sure that I could answer that question without knowing a little bit more information.
Sure. This is a New York City-based thing, so nobody here may have expertise on that, really. Sorry, I'm just trying to review questions and understand them before I issue them. Okay, somebody says, is there any combined work to create a set of standard reusables citywide? That would be great. I would imagine consumers would prefer a standard set that can be used anywhere versus each restaurant providing their own, resulting in consumers amassing many, many reusables. Yes, absolutely. I would really echo that. Anybody want to speak to that?
I mean, I have one comment on that. I think that's a great idea, but I know that I heard, and maybe Chloe and Nick have comments on this, what I heard from Department of Health and Mental Hygiene is that every restaurant's different, so every situation is different to avoid cross-contamination, and you would perhaps have to have a number of different types of reusables then, containers that are like options for different restaurants given different situations.
Yeah, maybe a range of 4 or 5 different things, but not, I mean, the way we're going now, it could end up being, 10,000 different containers for all the different restaurants.
which is not good. But again, remember, we're working towards and want to get to a place where eventually customers will be able to bring their own personal containers. We're not there yet, but we are still hoping that we can get to that place in New York City.
Right. Okay, somebody says, what % of people bring their containers back? I guess that's meant for Nick and Chloe both.
Yeah, it's Nick from Just Salad. You know, we track bowl on the what we call track bowl on the point of sale, and for us it's typically around 10%. But we do have stores as high as 30, or as low as like 2 or 3%. And so it's really depending on the store.
For us right now, this is Currie. We are at 20%.
Okay, here's a comment. EPA should showcase Rethink Disposable on its next webinar, maybe also the Green Restaurant Association. These are two programs that help restaurants identify opportunities to reduce disposables and evaluate the waste savings, and they also evaluate cost savings. Yes, I'll definitely take that under advisement. Please mention the Further with Food portal, which is populated and crowdsourced, and people can enter. Oh, God. Sorry, I'm not understanding all of these questions. I'm trying to do it quickly. Here's a comment. I'm helping Culver City implement a ban on polystyrene. I did not hear much talk about the health impacts of packaging. Do you have more articles available, or has the EPA taken a position on the nefarious effects of PS? I guess that's polystyrene. I would imagine within the toxics programs, EPA has information about polystyrene, but within my program, we don't have a position on the nefarious effects of polystyrene. We just try to reduce packaging across the board. Somebody says, could Chloe repeat what she had told about the issue of plastic gloves? I think you actually did go into it another time, Chloe. I think maybe we should wrap up. It's 2:24, and I'm actually getting overwhelmed by the number of questions, and I have some closing remarks to make. So I just want to thank our great presenters very much for their time and expertise, and also attendees, thank you so much, and thank you for all of your questions. EPA designs these webinars with input from our audience, so please take the time to fill out the evaluation form after the webinar ends. The webinar will be archived on EPA's SMM website, first the slides next week, and then the audio a week later. And so please stay tuned also for March's SMM webinar, which is going to be about wasted food from K through 12 schools. It's going to focus on some specific schools in Washington State and Massachusetts. That's going to be Thursday, March 30th at 1 p.m., so please mark your calendars. And this concludes today's session. Thank you so much.